Is it time to create something different with your life and your body? Right Body for You will inspire you and invite you to a different way of creating the body and the life you truly desire. Ready? Let's go. Here's your host, Donnielle.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Right Body for You. I am your host. Thank you for joining me today, in the past, or in the future. This show might be interesting, let's just say. But, right off, I would really like to, dedicate's the right word, but just kind of dedicate the show to my mom. I did radio with her for 27 years. I talked with her. I sat in behind the scenes. I learned how to interview. I learned radio from her, and it was just so fun, you guys, because as I was preparing for the show, as much as you can prepare for any types of these shows, but as I was preparing for the show, I had iTunes on random, and it's about 10 minutes before we went on air, it started playing her theme music from the last show that she did when before she died. So it's like, I'm like, oh, hi, Mom. Yeah, I'm preparing to go on the radio. How it taught me. So I just wanted to do a shout out to my mother today and all that she's contributed to me and bodies all over the world through her life and through all of her radio shows and stuff. So, hi, Mom. Glad you're listening. Thanks, everyone. All right. So, I'm Donnielle. In case you hadn't figured that out, Devonna's daughter, who we were just talking about, my mother. My name is Donnielle, and, I got into working with people, facilitating people and their bodies through unconventional means. But, what's fun about this is everybody I've ever talked to who chooses to do a life where they contribute to others like this, it's always interesting stories of how you get in. Mentioned about she had a health talk radio show, which she got into it because the doctor said she was dying, and she went, no, thank you. That doesn't actually work for me. And so she set out to heal herself, and she did. And, and along the way, she became a nutritionist, health talk radio show, and things like that. So for me, it all started with her, watching her on her journey and participating and learning and seeing all these different things that came through. Until, and I was doing other things in my life. I was a promotion manager for a TV station and things like that, and college boyfriends, fantasy, and, it was really to the point where my life wasn't enough. The fantasy wasn't actually enough. And that's where I took the right turn. I don't mean to pose right as in wrong. I mean as in right or left or straight or backwards kind of directional turn. And started really doing, facilitating classes, being involved with Active Consciousness and Right Body for You. And that's when things really started shifting for me. And I have to tell you, I love facilitating people in their bodies. It's so much fun, whether I do it on this radio show, in workshops all over the world, private sessions, telecalls. I've never had so much fun. And, I used to have one of those jobs where I got to meet famous people, and this, working with all of you and contributing is still some of the happiest times I've had in my life. And speaking of life, the show today we're talking about is your life, fact or fantasy. And this should be an interesting show because just preparing for it, it changed my world. Had a lot of interesting awarenesses come up myself. And, and that's why I joke about as much as you can prepare for these kind of shows because it started one direction, went another direction, and I have 2 pages of notes. And so let's see how much of this we can get through in the hour. And as you all know, it's a follow the energy. So let's see where it goes. All right. So your life, fact or fantasy? We wake up, we breathe, we work, we interact, we do things. So our lives are all facts lined up in a row? Or are we living in a fantasy? Would we even know the difference? Where does fantasy and fact meet? Does it meet? What is required to create a life where you are present and enjoy it? And it just, looking at that, it's like, and enjoy it. Because I know a lot of people who are like, I'm present in my life and my life sucks. So it's like, how can you be present in your life and enjoy it? How can you create that life that you are excited to wake up every morning? You are bounding out of bed, ready to get to the day. This is a subject I know very well, very well. Before I started in with the first access class or anything like that, I lived in a world of fantasy. And when I mean I lived in a world of fantasy, I really mean just a fantasy world to the point of where it would have been interesting to videotape me to see those moments where you start to just drift off. Like, have you guys ever seen the movie The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, where he would like just stare off into space, but in his head he's going off onto these fantasies, saving the girls, stopping the train, winning the prize, whatever it is. And so sometimes I'm wondering if that was what I looked like, but I remember this well. I was actually living in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and I lived alone. I had my cat, and which already that has some interesting energy bringing it up. But so I didn't grow up in Green Bay, so I was new in Green Bay and trying to find friends and, things like that. Worked at a TV station. And I would be at home, and then when I would step outside my door, I would slip into a fantasy world. I'm a writer, and I can make some very detailed, emotional, descriptive fantasy worlds, okay? So I remember I would get in my car, and then as I was driving to work, I would just sit there and I would fantasize. I would be like, oh, I would meet this guy, and this is what we would be like. And more than that, it would be like, yesterday, I was with the guy here, and then this is the next day, so our life would be like this today. So it wasn't just like, oh, this would be a nice fantasy, and I had these starts all the time. It was literally a day-to-day life I was living in my head with all these fantasy jobs and bodies and men and all of that kind of stuff. And so I would sit in my office, and I was really good at, I'm still really good at multitasking, but I was really good for multitasking of doing my job. I remember sit there working, and in my head I'm living a different fantasy, but I'm actually doing the work that I was hired to do. And every once in a while I would have to be like present enough to have a conversation with somebody or, answer an email or think about something intensely. But other than that, I was actually really good about living in this fantasy world, okay? And so when I say I know this one really, really, really well, really to a place of extreme not being present in your life, okay? So I get it. I really do. those places where it's like, oh, our dreams are better than this reality. I get it. It's alluring. It's seducing. It's easier. It could be funner. There's no what do you call it? There's nothing you can't overcome. There's no challenges that is too hard. Okay? So I get it. And how many of us start this with things like, oh, I am so bored with my life. I'm so frustrated. I'm sad, or I'm angry. And and I get that. It's like because I've done that myself, right? I'm so bored, or I'm just sad. I wish my life was different. Oh, it would be so nice if my life was, ideal, whatever that is, because even that is going to be different for every person. And, and for me, one of the things I always fantasized about was my body, okay? Well, if my body was different, I would have the ability to be seen. I would have the ability to attract the right man. I would do this. I would do that. I would be popular. I would be well-liked. It was really interesting how much I had placed on the physicality of my body, which fast forward now 9 years, I just think it's so fun that I get to travel the world helping people to change their body image and their life and not have it be on their body like that. So it's like, sometimes when watching the course of one life, it's kind of fun to see. Okay, so I get it. But what if that moment of I'm bored, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I'm mad, I'm sad, I'm lonely, whatever it is, what if that moment, instead of slipping into the fantasy, what if that moment is actually a great awareness? Okay? Because I really started looking at it like this. Because I did that. Mine was I'm lonely, I'm sad, and I'm bored. And so I started creating a fantasy. Okay, so let's really look at this. If you're sad, you're bored, frustrated, whatever it is, you're angry, what's the underlying point of view? Because, in all of my classes and stuff, every time I work with somebody, I always like to look at what's your underlying point of view here, okay? So if you have all these things going on, you're bored, you're sad, you're lonely, you're frustrated, what's the underlying point of view? You want something to be different in your life, okay? Something could be possibly different in your life, okay? I get that. And you're like, yeah, I know it can be different, but, all right, but look at this. What if instead of giving up or slipping into that fantasy realm of, I know my life can be different, what if that sadness, loneliness, anger, frustration, boredom, whatever it is, what if that is an indicator, yes, that you know you want your life to be different, but also that you already have the energy of creating that difference, okay? Because trust me, if you didn't know something else was possible and didn't have the capacity, capabilities of creating that difference, then you wouldn't be feeling all those different things. You wouldn't be frustrated. You wouldn't be bored, okay? So look at this. Turn this boredom, this frustration, this sad on its head. The underlying point of view is you have the energy and the ability. You might not cognitively know it or have the steps or action, but you have the energy that you know something's different and that you can achieve it, okay? One of my favorite things to talk about in the workshops is If you can ask a question, the awareness comes with the question you have the capacity to ask. So if you have the awareness of your life can be different, you also energetically have what's required to create that difference, to be that difference, or whatever it is. Okay? So what if that moment, instead of giving up, instead of going into a fantasy, what if you take that moment to go, oh, I have an awareness here, instead of, this is so wrong, this is so sad. What if that moment is not a moment of giving up? What if that moment is the beginning of the creation of change? Okay? Now, we're going to take a quick little break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the word fantasy, because I have a really funny story to share with this. As I was preparing for the show, I kept mistyping the word fantasy, and it's pretty funny what came up when I started breaking that down, okay? So we're going to take our first little break. You're listening to Donnielle. We are on Inspired Choices Network. We're on Inspired Choices Network, and you're listening to Right Body for You, and the show today is Your Life, Fact or Fiction, and we'll be right back.
The life and the body you secretly hope for is possible. Somewhere you know that, right? What if creating that body and life is not about deprivation and sacrifice? Would you be willing to choose it? What if it could be as simple as changing how you look at things? Right Body for You with Donnielle is a different kind of radio show. Each week, Donnielle invites you to you. She shares simple tools that you can use immediately to create changes in your body and your life. Something different begins now. Listen for Right Body for You every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Central, 12 p.m. Mountain, and 11 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
What would you say if I told you that you could change your life in only 1 hour and all while lying down relaxing? Thousands of people all over the world have. What am I talking about? It's called Access Consciousness, the bars. The bars is an energetic body process that contains 32 different points on your head that, when run, assist you in releasing decisions about any area of your life that you have made solid and as a result cannot change. The bars is the first class in Access Consciousness, a dynamic set of tools and information designed to transform any area of your life. When you have a bars session, the worst that can happen is you feel like you had a fantastic massage. The best thing that can happen is your whole life could change. Go to accessconsciousness.com today to find a facilitator to schedule a private session or to find a bars class in your area. Are you willing to give yourself an hour to change your life?
This is Right Body for You with Donnielle. To participate in the program today, please call toll-free in the U.S. 815-880-8255 or Canada 613-800-8736. Or you can Skype us at Inspired Choices Network. If you'd like to email a question, please send it to Donnielle at accessconsciousness.com. Now, back to the program.
And welcome back to Right Body for You. I am your host, Donnielle. And before we get into the subject, I'd really love to invite you to Edmonton, Canada in May. I'm facilitating some classes there, and I'm really excited about these classes. The first one is the Right Body for You 2.5-day workshop, like on the show you're listening to. We have so much fun in that class. We really delve into bodies and what else is possible with them about, Right Body for You. It's about the creation of your life. It's the contribution of your body. So we talk about bodies and money, bodies and weight, bodies and food, bodies and the earth, pain, you name it, we're talking about it, sex, and the energy behind words, all sorts of fun things, and you get a nice fun manual with it. And then we're also going to do an Access Consciousness facelift class. Hey, what else is possible when you remove point of view? You might actually look younger. What else is possible with that, right? And then we're doing the Access Consciousness 3-day body class. And I am so excited for this class, you guys. Because the number of times people have told me at the end of a Right Body for You workshop, I wish I had taken the Right Body for You class before I took a 3-day body class because I know I can receive more. I'm like, well, okay, let's do that and see what's possible. And so we're scheduling these 2 classes, the Right Body for You 2.5-day class and then the Access Consciousness 3-day body class, so that we can carry the energy of Right Body for You into the 3-day body class, which the 3-day body class, you spend 3 days giving and receiving these amazing hands-on body processes that Access has developed and discovered. And you can shift almost anything. So it's like with these 5.5 days, you don't have to take both classes. You could take one or the other or both. But I do encourage you to take both because for the first time really in Access history, we're doing this, where it's the 2.5-day Right Body for You workshop and then the 3-day body class. We're going to see what changes with bodies in our lives we can create when the energies of these classes intermix. So Edmonton, Canada, in May 2017. Check it out. Come play. I am so excited for this. And it's the first time in Access history that it's going to be like this, or Right Body for You history, or 3-day body class history. So come make history with us. All right. So today we're talking about fact or fantasy, your life, fact or fantasy. Okay, so one of the things I love to do is look at the word origin, okay? The first language is energy, and then we put words to match that energy, whatever it is. So when you're looking up words, you really want to look up the original meaning, the original definition. That way, and you need to do it in any dictionary printed before 1945, or there's some online resources as well that you can find. Because in 1945, some definitions were changed, but the energy still matches the original definition because that's when we looked at it and went, this word matches that energy. Okay, so you really want to look at that. So I started looking up fact and fantasy. Okay. Fact is really interesting. It comes up, it's like, well, it's event, occurrence, literally thing done. And what's interesting is it actually comes up with here and it's evil deed, which I find interesting. I'll have to research that one a little bit more. Okay. But then fantasy, also looking up, is intriguing. Okay. Fantasy is illusionary appearance, vision, imagination, or my favorite, picture to oneself. Okay, so these are the fantasies: illusionary appearance, a vision, imagination, or picture to oneself. Because I know that's what I was doing. I was really just doing a picture to myself. I was having a fantasy life that I was living that didn't interact in any way with the life I was actually living. Okay. And here's the part that I have to kind of tell on myself about. Every single time when I was preparing for the show, every single time that I wrote and typed out fantasy, which is spelled Fantasy, fantasy, every single time I wrote fantasty, Fantasty. And I'm like, all right, so if I'm mistyping it this frequently, let me kind of research it and see what's going on with there. And so, I broke out the word fan and tasty, which is, you look it up, it's tasty, right? Tasty, which is good tasting. But one thing it really got me to look at, which I'm excited about, is the first part of the word fantasy is fan, which is short for fanatic. Okay, which the original definition of that is insane person, zealous. You guys have ever heard of a zealot, right? Characterized by excessive enthusiasm, especially of religion. And so I had to laugh because I kept mistyping for fantasty, which means good tasting insane person, or that you like the taste of being this zealous, excessive enthusiasm, of our fantasy world and the life and how else it could be. So I kind of had to laugh at that, about that I was so frequently mistyping that and what the energy actually is. Because when we look at that, when we look at these fantasies, it's like, oh, that's so much better. You know, it's good tasting. It tastes better. That life in my head is so much better and tastes good, better than the life I'm leading. Okay. So I looked, you know, before the break, I kind of challenge you guys to look at those moments instead of going, oh, this is the moment I give up. This is the moment I slip into a fantasy. This is the moment where I disappear. What if you take that moment to have I'm becoming aware of another possibility. And with the awareness of that possibility, not only is it like, you're a golden, holding a carrot out to tempt a rabbit, you know, that gold string or whatever it is. So it's not just that. It's like, oh, universe goes, poof, here's an awareness of a possible life. Ha, ha, ha. You have no way of creating it. You have no way of doing it or being it. Ha, ha. No. The universe isn't like that. You're not like that. Whenever you have that awareness or fantasy or whatever it is of like another life that is possible, with that awareness comes the energy of how to create it. Okay? I can't get this emphatic enough or intense enough for you guys. Please look at this. Whenever you have that time of like, oh, I wish life was like this, well, good. You also have that, also with that awareness comes how to create it. Okay? So I really started looking at that because I'm like, oh yeah, well, I have a great fantasy world. You know, all of this stuff comes up and I want this or that, whatever. And I'm like, well, how do I create it? And so I really started looking at this. And it's like, what is one of the biggest differences between those who are creating a fantasy life and those who aren't? Okay? And I really started looking at it. It's this action. Okay? First, it's the acknowledgement of, oh, a different is possible. And, oh, I have the energy there of how to create it and what it would take to create it. And the next is action. Okay? I was a really good person at inaction. I mean, I was brilliant at it, you know, because I'm also always talking about you, instead of judging yourself for what you did or didn't do, look at the brilliance of it, that it, you know, it created, it got you to where you were and that you had a potency in it. And so for me, I was brilliant with the inaction. Because while I was living in this fantasy world, oh, it's so great, and all of this kind of stuff, it's like I was making no strides to change anything about it. I had the point of view my body was fat and unhealthy. What did I do about it? I sat in my chair at home, watched TV, pet my cat, and fantasized about what a different life would be like. There was no action in my life. There was just stewing in that energy of other possibilities and just sitting there doing nothing. So I really started looking at this. One of the biggest things is action. I know this seems simplistic, but be honest and vulnerable with yourself. The things you're fantasizing about, the possibilities of, are you taking action or are you just sitting? Now, some of you may be going, hey, I am taking action. I get it. This isn't across the board thing, but it is an element for a lot of people. There is no action. Okay? Which is interesting because when I looked up the word fact, one of the original definitions was action. I found that very interesting. It's like, oh, so if this part is reading for you, if you're going, oh, yeah, you know, it's like, well, okay, so truth. What action can you take today to create the life that you desire? It could be something as simple as listening to this radio show. It could be something like, you know, signing up for a Pilates class. It could be something like opening that book about stock trading, you know, if you have a fantasy about the money and all that. what action is required for you to change, okay? What action can you take today to create the life that you desire, okay? Oh, my friends, this is just the tip of the iceberg, trust me. I think I haven't even looked at my notes yet, which tells you I still have 2 pages of them. All right, so we're going to take our next little break. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about this action thing, but we're going to also talk about what else is going on. Because it's like, if you're not taking action, why not? What is it that's stopping? Trust me, the answer is not lazy. I know some of us would like to go, well, I'm just lazy. That's why I'm not changing. That's why I'm not doing anything. Sorry. It's not about being lazy. What else is actually going on when you're not taking that action? And what else could it be if it's not action? Okay? We're gonna look at this when we come back. All right, this is Donnielle. You're listening to Right Body for You. We are on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back.
The life and the body you secretly hope for is possible. Somewhere you know that, right? What if creating that body and life is not about deprivation and sacrifice? Would you be willing to choose it? What if it could be as simple as changing how you look at things? Right Body for You with Donnielle is a different kind of radio show. Each week, Donnielle invites you to you. She shares simple tools that you can use immediately to create changes in your body and your life. Something different begins now. Listen for Right Body for You every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Central, 12 p.m. Mountain, and 11 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
What if there's nothing wrong with you? What if you're far greater than you've ever given yourself credit for? What if it's time to know the gift and the contribution you are to the world and to like yourself a lot more? Hi, my name is Dane here. 13 years ago, I started to truly ask questions. Actually, I started to be the question, and everything changed for me. Asking questions opens doors to infinite possibilities. And it's not about finding the answer. It's about being the question. Always. What I'm inviting you to step into is something that Einstein, Marie Curie, Newton, Da Vinci, Gandhi, Picasso, and Aristotle all knew to be true. What if no question is too big or too small? What if anything is possible for you? What if together we could create a kinder, gentler, happier world? Is now the time? Go to beingyouclass.com and sign up for a free video series, My Gift to You. beingyouclass.com. What if you, truly being you, are the gift and change this world requires? beingyouclass.com.
This is Right Body for You with Donnielle. To participate in the program today, please call toll-free in the U.S. 815-880-8255 or Canada 613-800-8736. Or you can Skype us at Inspired Choices Network. If you'd like to email a question, please send it to Donnielle@accessconsciousness.com. Now, back to the program.
And welcome back to Right Body for You. I am your host, and sometimes the voice in your head, Donnielle. And I would also like to invite you to New Orleans in September of this year. Speaking of another history making, for the first time ever, Right Body for You, we're doing a Right Body for You, the Tools in Action, which means we're taking the tools presented in the 2.5-day Right Body for You workshop, and we're taking them out into everyday life. You know, talking about action. This is what I'm talking about here. With this, we're bringing the manual to life. I have different activities planned, interactions to actually use the tools of Right Body for You and to help get a depth and clarity about how to use them and how to be with your body, not in a classroom, but in everyday life. I can't wait for this class in September. New Orleans is one of my favorite cities, and I can't wait to share it all with you guys. We have tours planned. We have parties planned. I was just recently in New Orleans, and I got the venue. Not a venue so much as because we're going to meet every day and for just like an hour and then go out into the world to do things. But the place that we're going to meet, Let's just say the words French Quarter and mansion and French style and decadence, hedonistic. It's just so much fun. I cannot wait to share this with you guys. Okay, and that also means I might be changing the last activity we do to, what's the word? Masquerade ball. Just saying. So please check it out. You go to my website, Donnielle.com, to learn more about it. All right. So speaking of your life, fact or fantasy? What if being in a masquerade ball wasn't a fantasy, but you could do it in September? All right. Sorry, I couldn't resist. All right. Sorry, reading the chat room. If you guys have never joined us in the chat room, please do go to inspiredchoicesnetwork.com, log into the chat room, put in your name, and join us. You can ask questions, talk to each other, interact. It's a lot of fun. All right. So today we're talking about your life, fact or fantasy, or fantasty, liking the good taste of the zealousy that we are with our fantasies. And I challenge you to look at, if you have that boredom, that frustration, that sadness, that loneliness, whatever it is that makes you slip into that fantasy world, what if instead of that moment of giving up or that moment of being still, what if you get the awareness that it brings with it the energy that, yes, that change is possible, and it brings with it the energy of what to do, how to do it, what is required to create that kind of life. Okay. And what is one of those big differences is action. Okay. And it's not, like I said before the break, it's not laziness. Sorry. I know a lot of people, it's interesting the number of people, including myself, who like that reason justification or that excuse of, well, I didn't take action. I didn't do it because I'm just lazy. Sorry. That's not it. It doesn't actually match the energy. So I started looking at that. I'm like, okay, so if it isn't laziness that doesn't make us change our lives, whether we are doing the actions or not doing the actions, it's like, what else is going on there that we don't take that first step? We don't actually institute anything into it, because I was actually watching Reba McEntire music videos online last night. Random crap, you guys. I know. Welcome to my head. So I was watching this Reba McEntire video for her song Fancy. And if you guys have never heard it, it's about, as in her words, poor white trash. This girl who is poor white trash outside New Orleans, which I found funny. I thought I forgot about that with the events I'm doing. Anyway, so she's this poor white trash girl outside of New Orleans, and, they had no money, no anything, and her mom threw her out, told her to go out and use her body, be nice to the men, create a life. Anyways, and now she's, like, rich and famous, and she goes back to, look at the shack that she used to live in and all this kind of stuff. So, I really started looking at that. I'm like, wow. So what's one of the big differences between her and, I know she's a fantasy character, but there are real life people like this as well. It's like, what is the difference there? And that's where I first started getting the action, but also it's the demand. Okay. So I know some people do take those actions. I get that. Also look at the energy of demand behind it. Okay. How many of us take those actions and go, all right, I'm doing this, so it's not going to make a difference. See, I'm doing it. I'm moving. I'm action. I'm reading the book. I'm taking the class. I'm cleaning out the closet, whatever it is. But the energy behind it is already give up. The energy behind it is fantasy that it will change it. Because really look at that. How much of the action is, it's not going to, or how much of the energy behind that action can be, well, it's not going to change it. Okay. So you even have a fantasy that it won't change, okay? Because I know some people who, they have things going on in their life, and I'm like, okay, and they're, I'm talking to them, and they're like, well, I won't do it because I'm afraid of what would happen if I did do it. Okay, so you're not doing it because you have a fantasy of the possible negative reaction, but you don't know if that is true, so you're still not doing it. So it's interesting, the thing that comes up, because it's not just like, the fantasy isn't just the positive thing. Oh, I could have this grand, glorious, wonderful life. We also sometimes don't take that first step because we're afraid of the less, or the anger, or the destruction. So this fantasy thing isn't just about a betterment. Sometimes we have the fear of, or the fantasy of fear, the fantasy of the negative outcomes of what might that all be. Okay? So when you really want to start looking at these energy of, when you are making these actions, you're making these choices, you're making these things, please look at the energy behind it. Are you doing the action with the energy of, see, it's not going to change, or it's not going to work, or see, it's not for me? Or are you doing it with the energy of demand? Are you doing it with the energy of, this is going to change no matter what? Okay? Because I've been looking at people's lives of who have created wondrous, phenomenal, great things, and then people who haven't, or, and in between, basically people who are happy with their life and people who aren't, right? And they have this energy of demand with the actions that they're taking, okay? And that energy of demand actually comes with the original awareness of all that, your frustration, you're bored, you're lonely, whatever it is. It comes with that as well. So all of that is there if you're willing to look at it, okay? And there's one other aspect of this that I'd really kind of want to look at. How exciting and alluring are our fantasies, okay? We have these fantasies of, being these potent, don't take crap from anybody, wealth beyond imagination, adoration, the right body, the right wealth, the right life, the right husband or wife, the right, whatever it is. We have this fantasy. How much are we not willing to take the action to change it, to actually reach out our hand for it, because we're afraid it's not there, or we're afraid to prove that's not who we be? Okay. It's, and I really started looking at this with magic. It's like, oh yes, magic is possible. We are magic. We can create. We're psychic. We can change the wind just by talking to it, things like that. How many of us have a fantasy of that and don't trust ourselves to be that because we have this fear that it is a fantasy? My grandfather used to quote, and I always quote that it was my grandfather that said it, but it was some other famous person. But today is family day, apparently. I start with my mother, and I'm talking about my grandfather. He used to say this quote of, it's better to keep your mouth shut and let them think you're an idiot than open your mouth and prove it. And I always thought that was kind of funny. I have a piece of paper that he wrote it on, and, But how much do we do that with other things as well? How much do we not reach out to create that magic, to create that body, to create that wealth, to create that job, that relationship, because we fear it is just a fantasy? And if we never reach out for it, it's always that possibility. It's never disproven. We always have that hope as long as we don't actually reach out for it. Okay? I know, okay? I get it. I'm looking at this too. How much do we not reach out for those differences in our life simply because until they aren't disproven, we still have the possibility of it? I get that. I've done it. As long as, I don't actually talk to that guy, I can always have the fantasy that he and I will be together. Yeah. But if so, I'm never going to talk to him, because then I can have the fantasy that we're together, because if I talk to him, it might not happen. And how many of us don't actually want that hope to go away? So it's almost better, we've almost come to the conclusion that it's better to fantasize about the possibility than actually actualize it or try for it or even reach for it. How much of your life are you not willing to reach for because you're afraid that you will eliminate the possibility of it ever occurring? It's like magic. I'm great with working magic until somebody looks at me and says, "Oh, did you do that?" And then I can never if somebody sees it, I will negate it, because then I have to prove that it's actually true, that I'm actually magic. But if they don't see it, I still the magic, because there's no one to, talk to me about it. There's no one to say, "Nope, that wasn't you," or "Nope," or "That was you." Okay? So let's everything that is, please destroy and uncreate it. Right, wrong, good, bad, pocket, night, shorts, boys, and beyond, which is an example of the access consciousness verbal processing. You can go to theclearingstatement.com and look at it and read all about it. But I just had to clear it a little bit because, wow, the energy was getting really intense. Okay? So really, look at this, please. How much are we not willing to reach for? Because until we reach for it, and we either achieve it or don't achieve it, be it or not be it, we still have the hope and desire that it is possible. Okay? So, where have we made fantasy more valuable than actually being it, doing it, having it, achieving it? Okay? How many fantasies do you have that you fear aren't real? And this is what I'm talking about with the magic. Okay? If I had this body, my life would be like this. But I'm afraid that even if I had that body, my life wouldn't be like that. So I'm going to stay here. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be right here, not change anything, because then that is still out there as a possibility. If I had this amount of money, I would do this or be this. And then underneath, you're kind of going, you know what? Wow, there's a lot of responsibility with that. Maybe I'll just fantasize about it. Maybe I'll just, that would be great. And I don't actually desire to do that. But the fantasy is great. It's warm. It's fuzzy. Okay? Or if I had this job, I would create this. It's like, how many of us have this desire, fantasy of being an author? And this was one I did as a kid a lot. How many of us, I would fantasize about being a writer, a published author. And what's interesting is I didn't actually fantasize about the writing of it. I didn't actually fantasize about creating the books. I fantasized about what life would be like after I created the books. The interviews, the acclaim, the money, everything, okay? It's like we skipped that middle part of the doing and the being and the action, go right to the end. My life would be like this if this occurred, okay? If I had this kind of fame, I would have this kind of life. Well, how are we going to get famous? I don't know, I'm just going to be famous. Well, what are you going to do for it? I'm just going to be famous. Alrighty, have a good time with that, right? How many of us have like I said, this whole show, as I was preparing for it, I'm like, holy crap, There are so many places I would like to go with this and talk about it. How many of us don't take an action simply because we fear it isn't actually real or possible? And it's better to not achieve it than get rid of it ever as a possibility. Well, I'm here to tell you guys, you can't actually get rid of possibilities, okay? Everything is always possible. And how many of us don't want to actually, how many of us don't actually want to, well, okay, blah, blah, blah. So when you're looking at these fantasies, please, if you're going to the end of the fantasy, look at the middle. It's like I said with the author thing for me. I wanted to be an author. I fantasized about what the end of it would be. What if being able to achieve the end is also being willing to look at the energy of the middle? Okay? And it's not so much as like, am I willing to sit there and write every day, or am I still willing to do what's required to change my body? I'm not even talking about willingness to do it, because if you have the fantasy, you have the ability, you have the capacity, you have the ability to do it as well. What I'm saying is really look at the energy of it. Don't, when you're looking and you're looking at creating those actions, you know, what action can I take today to change my life and living? Don't just go to the end. Include all of those energies, okay? Because all of your life is about energy, changing it, living it. It's about the energy of it. So you have the demand, because you have the fantasy. It starts going from there. Great. You have the end of the fantasy, what your life would be like if this occurred, right? Okay. What I'm going to ask you also to do is look at the middle part. What's the energy of this? Because it's like, A, demand. Oh, the fantasy would be great. Z or Z at the end. Oh, this is what my life will be like when it's like that, when this occurs. Great. Look at that middle energy, B through Y. What is the energy there as well? Okay? Look at that energy, and it's not so much of a what, because the what also comes, but you want to include that energy in the creation of the end or the result or whatever it is you're looking at, okay? Look at that energy as well. Include that energy as well, because then those actions that you take, those questions, those classes, comes with more ease, more joy, because you're not looking to just get to the end. You're enjoying and being present with every moment of it, okay? If you're always looking for the end, the result, this will be great when this occurs, be present with this occurring. Enjoy every moment, every possibility, include that energy, because trust me, then all of those other things will change. And if you're not if you're not looking at the change, if you're not doing the action because you fear that possibility going away, really be vulnerable with yourself, and do you want that possibility, okay? All right, I'm rapidly running out of time. I think we might need to do a part 2 here because there's so much more information, and I know you guys are going to have a lot of questions about this, as will I. I will be listening again. I hope you listen again. Please email with these questions at Donnielle@accessconsciousness.com, DONNIELLE @accessconsciousness.com, or you can go to my website, Donnielle.com, DONNIELLE, leave me a message. Check out the classes coming up that we talked about, and if you would like a private session, Donnielle.com. Those are all the great places to connect with me. So, yeah. What if you could actually live your fantasy life? Because you know what? I know you can. Do you know you can? Get the energy of it. All right, everyone. Thanks. Have a great one. Talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to Right Body for You. Donnielle will return next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Central, 12 p.m. Mountain, and 11 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you and your body will join us. Until then, have fun.